I've read a lot of popular books over the years, and a lot of them live up to the hype, while quite a few of them end up falling short. And when I see a book so widely talked about, my first question to myself is this book actually good? Is it actually worth the read? And that is the question that we're going to be answering in today's video with two books that have been all over everybody's feed recently. I know they've been on mine. And because of that, I'm assuming they've been all over yours as well. So let's just go ahead and jump into the reading vlog. The first book I'm reading in today's video is Into the Blue by Brodie. This book has been everywhere, and not only have a ton of people been reading it, but I've seen so many good reviews for this book. Into the Blue is a love story that spans decades, and we're following our main character, AJ Graves, and when we start the book, she's 17, and she dreams of being a writer for SNL one day, but at the moment, she is stuck in her small town working at the video store. But one day, Noah Drew, our male main character, and the youngest in a line of very famous actors, walks in, becomes her coworker at the video store, and AJ's small town life is never the same from there. They end up exploring acting together, specifically improvisation, with the help of Noah's aunt, who is on an improv show that AJ is deeply obsessed with, and Noah and her kind of bond through that, as well as developing an insanely deep chemistry. I am currently 156 pages in, and I'm loving this. I absolutely love the comedy, the improv, and overall acting elements that are added into this book. I grew up doing theater and absolutely loved it when I did it back then. And there were a few times that we would try improv here and there. And let me tell you, it is hard as hell. It is so incredibly challenging. So for these two to be able to click with one another, be scene partners, and to be really good and talented at it, it is like insanely impressive. I also find filmmaking and just the film industry in general so fascinating, and we're starting to get bits and pieces of that in here. And I feel like we're gonna get more of that storyline as AJ just gets older and flourishes more in her career, and hopefully we'll get more of the behind the scenes as well, because I feel like seeing into that, which is more of a private world, is so cool to see, even if it is just in a fiction book. Now that I'm through with the first part of this book, I wanted to talk about the formatting. The first part has no chapters. It does end up having page breaks, but it makes it feel more like a continuous sequence of events and helps everything connect together better, in my opinion. And I feel like that perfectly mimics the improvisational nature of what AJ and Noah are learning during that part of the book. There are so many common phrases with improv, as in like the show must go on, yes and, never say no, don't leave your scene partner hanging. And I feel like this was just a perfect parallel to how improv works, and I thought that was absolutely genius. And I also just love a page break because a lot of them are pretty short, and I feel like that is something that keeps me so engaged whenever I'm reading, because I'm like, okay, it's a page and a half, like I can finish this in a minute, bet, let's go. And then I just keep on doing that until I've realized that I've read a lot more than I thought I was going to end up reading in that reading session, and that's always a good feeling. Once we do get to a certain part where she decides to end it off as a chapter, it makes so much sense. It feels like such a defined ending, and it makes such a statement, especially in comparison to how she was writing prior to this chapter. And because everything else was continuous, it feels like it's an end to that part of the story, and it was just so brilliant. I absolutely love it whenever authors have an interesting format to their books, because I feel like it just really plays into the whole experience of reading that book, and overall just sets you up for a more unique reading experience, which I always love. Because I am enjoying this book so much, I am hoping to binge quite a bit of it today. I don't really have anything else on the agenda besides reading this book, and I'm just on the absolute edge of my seat. I want to know what's going to happen next. I don't think I'm going to be able to finish this today, but I am going to see if I can pop out to a coffee shop or maybe the park if it's nice enough outside. But for now this morning, I just want to sit in my reading chair and dive back on into the Blue. I'm currently on page 318 of Into the Blue by Emma Brodie, and I'm still very much enjoying it. I forgot to mention this in my first update, but this book is actually set in the 2000s, and then it goes from there. And because I was born in 2001, I feel like there are certain things about the story that is making me feel pretty nostalgic. And I am honestly a sucker for nostalgia. I also really like how this is set during a time before the huge comeuppance of social media and smartphones. And right now in the story, I am in 2013, which I believe is around the time that Instagram came out, because if I remember correctly, it came out when I was in 6th grade, so I feel like that would be right. And because social media is more prevalent in these later years that we are currently in and that we're going to be in, there might be some talk about it, but I kind of like it in books whenever they disregard social media, because it just feels like more of an enjoyable reading experience for me, because I don't want to be reminded of TikTok and Instagram. I'm already on those apps probably too much throughout the day, and if I'm reminded of them while I'm reading, I'm probably going to get distracted, and I also just feel like it takes me out of the story at times whenever those things are mentioned. And I feel like that's been happening a lot in a lot of newer releases, so I'm really glad that it's not a huge theme in this book because of the time period. There have also just been so many songs from the 2000s that have been mentioned as well, and I'm just a sucker for nostalgia. Her writing has this way of transporting you into this world. I feel like a lot of the times I talk about how I have trouble paying attention to the book and really locking in. I get distracted very easily, and I really haven't been having that experience with this book at all. The way in which she writes makes the characters and their struggles just feel so incredibly real. The way that she describes things, it's just so luscious and detailed, and I'm loving every single minute of it. And it feels like this book is so well thought out. It's constructed beautifully, and it feels like she thought of every single minute little detail, especially regarding the format, which I know I talked about a lot earlier. I really love how we get to figure out so much about AJ just from her family and who they are and how she fits into the family. I feel like you can learn so much about somebody in a book or in real life based off of their family dynamic. She's a middle child. She has a twin sister with special needs, so she's always helping, always fading into the background, always trying to not be too much. And there was this part at the beginning of the story where it was super concise. There was like one sentence or paragraph about each family member, and you got to know them immediately. I would love to be able to find it, but Emma Brodie explained certain family members as different cards. It was super genius and makes a lot of sense. She said that having her family home for the summer felt like holding a full deck of cards. Her brother Patrick was the king of diamonds. He was the golden boy. Her sister Libby was the queen of clubs. She was super popular. Emily, AJ's twin, is the ace of hearts. She's always bringing out the good in others, and so on with the rest of her family. She has a really big family. And I feel like with all that knowledge that we got in the beginning of the book, we just know so much about AJ to the point where I feel like I know how she feels even before I'm told in the story. It was like a brief moment of being told, and then the rest has just been shown. And I really like that. I really enjoy Emma Brodie's writing style. Why did I say it like that? I'm sorry. And I feel the same way with Noah, even though we don't get his point of view. I feel like just knowing so much history about these characters has really helped in the context of their adult lives. I also just have to say, there is a character named Brian McKenzie in here, and I immediately clocked that that name is from the Father of the Bride movies. I don't know if Emma Brodie is like a fan of those movies or if she just came up with that name out of thin air. But if you have not seen those movies, they are just so wholesome and cute, and I absolutely love them. I watched them a lot growing up, and I have to say that Brian McKenzie in this book, he kind of deserved better. And even saying all of that, I feel like I've gotten to a point with this book now that I'm almost done with it. I believe I have around 100-ish pages left, where I'm kind of torn because I feel like it is starting to drag just a little bit. Things have been getting a little repetitive here and there, especially because there is quite a bit of miscommunication between our main characters, and I do understand why. But it is starting to get to me just a little bit. And you know what? If the end ends up pulling through and things end up making more sense as I keep reading, which I'm sure they might possibly, then I think that this book could be very highly rated for me. I am a little bit nervous to finish this because I have a feeling it's going to be a tearjerker from the things that I learned in the last two parts about our main characters. So I guess we'll just have to see how this goes. I kind of want to finish it tonight, but if I don't, I'm just going to finish it tomorrow morning. I finished Into the Blue by Emma Brodie, and unfortunately, I don't think I enjoyed this book as much as everybody else is. Let's start with the good parts. I feel like the beginning of the book was really well done because a lot of second chance romances don't give you enough context to fully connect with the characters and their relationship during the first part of the relationship, so you actually care about them getting together and you know enough about their history. But I feel like this book did that incredibly well. I feel like the first part might have been my favorite, and it almost worked as a prequel to the rest of their story, which I just really enjoyed. And like Kristen Hanna does in her books, which I always really enjoy, you get to spend so much time with these characters over the years, and I just love that because you get to know them so deeply, and it's like another level of connection that you don't get with a lot of other books where you just get like a year or a few months of their time. I really enjoyed Emma Brodie's writing. I feel like I just felt everything. You could feel the tension in this book. My stomach was twisting. I felt giddy. I was really rooting for them. There were so many parts of the story too because this is such a nostalgic time period where I could really visualize things well. And format-wise, like I was talking about in the beginning, where there was no chapters, it was just page breaks, and it was because they were always together and they're improvising, they're having a good time. But it's also whenever everything is right in the world. Even those smaller moments, they're important because they're consistently together. So there's no need for a new chapter because something good is happening all the time. There were also a lot of lines that got continuously brought back up throughout the story. One of my favorites that really stood out to me was AJ knew that nothing she could say to Noah would ever be wrong. And that is just so like real. Whether it's a partner, a friend, a family member, that feeling of just being able to wholly be yourself is just so satisfying, and it's so deeply relatable if you have that kind of person in your life. And the best part plot-wise of this book, in my opinion, just overall, was definitely the improv and the acting elements that were a huge part of the story, obviously, besides the love story itself. For a while I was reading this, I just felt such a connection to the story, and the tension between the main characters was really well done. However, things did start to get a wee bit repetitive. It feels like in this last part of the book, we were just going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and it was just very draining, especially because the plot more towards the end of the book was so interesting, and I was really excited for that thing to happen because it felt very full circle for our two main characters, AJ and Noah, and it just got increasingly more frustrating because their relationship itself, in more ways than one, just kept getting in the way of the things that meant a lot to these characters and also to their relationship. So because of that, unfortunately, a lot of this last part of the book started to feel quite redundant, and it felt like it was dragging along. And considering the amount of story that was told during this last part, I just feel like it was a little bit long. But did it make me cry at the end? Yes, like I still did enjoy the story. I still did like the characters. But unfortunately, because of all those things that I mentioned prior, the spark of their relationship did die out a little bit for me more towards the end. And I also feel like the epilogue / extra chapter just wasn't really necessary. I feel like it kind of left off in a great way. And during one of my earlier updates, I ended up saying that I thought that this book was so perfectly crafted, so well thought out. It felt like every little minute detail was placed there for a reason. And I definitely felt that way about the first half of this book. But I just feel like the rest of this book wasn't treated with as much care and attention as the first half of the book. So overall, I really enjoyed the writing, but I feel like as I kept reading, the storyline started to fall off. So is this popular book worth your time? Yeah, you know, I feel like there are so many people enjoying it, you might as well give it a chance. I think if you enjoy second chance romance, a childhood friends to lovers, kind of like a forbidden romance, or just a relationship that's a little bit more messy and toxic, I think you could really like the couple in this book quite a bit. And I think you could also enjoy it too if you're like me and you enjoy learning about improv and the film industry, because that was just so deeply interesting to me. I feel like whenever books are hyped up so much and they're getting such great reviews, it is harder for me to give it a star rating for some weird reason. If I have an idea, I'll put it above my head. I'm thinking at this point, maybe like a 3.5 to a 4 star. I'll have to think about it a little bit more. I will have a final review and rating in my wrap up at the end of the month though, and on Goodreads, so look out for that. The next book I'm reading in today's reading vlog should come as no surprise because you guys just saw it in the last clip, and that is Yesteryear by Caro Burke. Just like Into the Blue, this book has been all over the place on social media. I do think that this book has gotten a little less love review-wise than Into the Blue. I've seen so many 5-star reviews of Into the Blue and just super high 4-star ratings. And this book I feel like is still rated pretty highly. I just feel like even though it is hyped, it's not hyped to the extent that Into the Blue is. Like, do you remember a few years ago whenever Fourth Wing and Divine Rivals novels came out in the same year. Everybody was saying that they really, really enjoyed both books, but Fourth Wing was kind of like the standout of that year. But then that doesn't also mean that people didn't enjoy Divine Rivals. It's kind of like that comparison, in my opinion. In Yesteryear, we're following our main character, Natalie, and she is the epitome of a trad wife influencer. I don't know if you guys know who Ballerina Farm is, but if you do, keep that in the back of your mind. I honestly feel like this was kind of based around her, or at least the Hannah from Ballerina Farm that we get to really see online. I'm not saying that she is anyway like Natalie in real life, because we do get to see Natalie be not the greatest person from her perspective. And I don't know a ton about Hannah Nealman or her family, but it does kind of feel like there are too many parallels for it to be a coincidence. But again, I'm just bringing up the comparison for context reasons only. Online, Natalie paints this beautiful picture of being the perfect mother, the perfect wife, the perfect homemaker. They have this luscious farm. She has a healthy relationship with her husband. She cooks everything from scratch. And obviously this is just a facade for the cameras. But in reality, she has nannies, plural. They have ranch hands. She has a content assistant. And she acts like she does it all when in reality, it's all just basically fake. But her followers don't get to see that. Honestly, the way she portrays herself online is kind of a slap in the face to all the women out there who are mothers that take care of the home, that do all the cleaning, that do all those things without any help and don't get any recognition, and yet she's here flaunting it, acting like she does. But whenever she doesn't actually do it, even though that she acts like she does, and she gets recognition for it and they don't. So, gotta love that. Anyways, I could probably talk about this for hours, but the word trad wife in general being used today, especially for people online, most of them are not actual trad lives because they do live such crazily privileged lives. And I honestly feel like Caro Burke wrote this book to be a part of that bigger discussion. And this book starts in present day. You get to know Natalie, how much you kind of hate her a little bit, what her life is actually like behind the scenes of social media, and then all of a sudden she wakes up and she's just in the 1800s. Going back to the past with her is such a cool plot twist and just plotline in general, but because I've only read a little bit of the story so far, I feel like I haven't gotten to see too much of her struggle with actually having to be a trad wife back in the day with all the extra complications and the extra chores and things to do, just because it was such a different time. And call me crazy, but why am I like excited to see her struggle a little bit? I don't know. And I obviously feel that way because Natalie herself is such an incredibly unlikable character. But also, if she was likable, I feel like the story wouldn't be nearly as interesting or enticing. She's very religious and conservative in a very high and mighty way. She feels as if her trajectory of life is better than others who believe in other things or just want other things out of life. And even regardless of religion and political views and her anti-feminist takes, she just feels like she's better than everyone else because of her status, because of her family, because of the way that she looks from an outsider's point of view. It is a lovely evening out, so I decided to do some reading outside tonight. I'm currently a little over halfway through Yesteryear, and I'm really enjoying this book so far, especially with how incredibly unlikable our main character is. Not that I particularly need a likable main character to enjoy a book, but most of the time I feel like I read books with relatively likable characters, so it is just a little bit different for me. It is really interesting, though, to see Natalie talk herself into and almost gaslight herself into justifying the choices that she's made for her life. Natalie does end up going to college, and that's how she meets her husband, and then she stops going to college at a certain point whenever they start like building a family. And her college roommate was very much the opposite of her. She's very progressive. She wants to finish college. She wants a big like corporate job. She's the idea of this modern woman, and Natalie is the complete opposite of that, obviously. But there are many times throughout this book where Natalie thinks of her old college roommate. Her name is Rena, and she's like, like I bet she's miserable. I'm not miserable though. I'm so incredibly happy, even though she's not. And the way that she talks about Rena is just so interesting to me because of the fact that she's literally just putting her down so she can feel like she's better than somebody. She can feel like she made the right choices. And she also uses religion in that way as well. And in a way, it almost feels like she's cosplaying a life that she feels like she should be living because of the conservative religious standard for women. And I'm very much enjoying the conversation that Caro Burke is bringing to the table about all of that. That being said, there were like a few things mentioned that made me a little queasy. read in, if I'm gonna be completely honest. Just the way that they were talking about certain people and certain things, or just things that I just don't agree with. Not to say that I don't have to agree with everything a character says or does in a book. Like, this is definitely isn't the first time, but I feel like just because of the state of our country, you know what I'm saying, it feels a little too real, a little too close to home, that like people are actually saying these things. It's like, oh, okay. And there have been so many ironic moments where she'll say or do something that totally goes against who she believes that she is and her beliefs, and it's just so funny and ironic to read about. And it adds this like comical undertone to the book that I really wasn't expecting. I'm really liking her writing. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but I feel like there's just something about her writing that clicks with my brain, and it just helps me stay completely immersed in the story, especially with the different storylines from past to present that we're getting. You guys know I love a book with a unique or more interesting format, and there's a lot of short chapters, which I also love. There's a lot of page breaks, and I feel like the way that she's been using the page breaks and just the different types of formatting that she's ended up doing has made this book even more interesting to me, because I don't know what she's gonna do next. Like, there were moments where she broke down parts of Natalie's day, and she does end up bringing that format back later, but it serves a purpose, like a comparison purpose. I just thought that was very interesting, because she literally could have just written this like any other old book and just had regular chapters, no page breaks, anything like that. But the format of books just adds something to it to me that makes certain books like Into the Blue that I read earlier in this video and Yesteryear stand out from others. And I feel like that's something that I've really been noticing this year. There was something that happened around the time of my last update that I was kind of shocked about. It wasn't like a big plot twist moment, but it definitely had my mind going in circles. I was like, okay, like what does this mean? What's gonna happen? But I feel like we really haven't gone anywhere from that, and I'm kind of confused as to if what happened was a hallucination or if it was real, or if she convinced herself it wasn't real. And I think I'm having a harder time with that specific moment and wanting to know where the story is going, because I have zero predictions as to what is happening. Like, I'm enjoying learning about Natalie. I'm enjoying the two different perspectives. I'm really liking everything that's happening. I just don't know where we're going from here. Like, where's the end point of this story? You know, what was the whole underlying point of telling the story, and how are we going to wrap it up? That's what I'm the most interested to see, because I feel like this ending could really make or break this book for me, just because I have, again, zero idea where we're going. I finished Yesteryear by Caro Burke, and I actually really ended up enjoying it. I do think that the way everything wrapped up, I wasn't expecting, which obviously I love in a book, but also I didn't love the way that it was going. It felt a little bit out of left field, I guess. I'm still not 100% sure how I feel about the ending, but I know that once I got to a certain point, I was expecting one thing to happen, because there is quite a bit of politics in general in this book. Caleb, Natalie's husband, her dad is a politician and he wants to run for president, and so I was expecting something to happen there. But if Caro Burke went with that plotline, it would be more thriller, and this book isn't a thriller, even though in my opinion it does kind of read in that way a little bit. I don't even know how this book is technically classified, but I really enjoyed it because it just felt very unique. I feel like if you want something similar to this and you haven't read Best Offer Wins by Marissa Kashino, I would definitely check that out. I feel like the characters are similar, but they're also very different. I feel like Natalie is way more unlikable than Margot is, but Margot is like a little bit more unhinged than Natalie is. And I really enjoyed Best Offer Wins when I read it this year, so I feel like it's no surprise that I really enjoyed this as well. Once I started getting more towards the end though, there were so many moments where I was like gasping, and I was like what is literally happening? And I feel like this whole book was truly just a deep dive of what it's like to be a woman and have society standards shoved down your throat, where you're basically willing to do anything to be that perfect version of yourself that society wants you to be. And because Natalie is a mom to a lot of children, it also talks a lot about motherhood. I am not a mom personally, so I feel like the perspectives that she gave on that were kind of eye-opening and jarring in a way, because I just wasn't expecting Natalie and who she is and what her values are to have that perspective on having kids. But I also feel like it's a very realistic thing, because I'm sure other people who have society shoved down their throat feel that way too. And it's also so funny to me because she consistently puts down the idea of the modern woman, and yet it kind of feels like she's just jealous and wants to be that and wants to have the choice to be who she wants to be this whole time. I think I enjoyed the present day timeline of this book a lot more than the 1800s timeline, surprisingly, especially because you're learning how she got to the point in her life where social media became big, how she had her family, and all of those details. And I really love how it kind of paints this incredibly transparent picture about social media and how everything you see online isn't completely who people are in real life. Would I have loved some more answers at the end? And do I wish that there would have been a little bit more context and explanation? Yeah, honestly. But I still did really enjoy this book, and overall, I think that this book deserves the hype that it gets. And as for right now with my rating, I'm thinking a 4-star, maybe a 4.25, but as always, if you want to know my final ratings on things, you can wait for my wrap-up at the end of the month, which will be coming actually in a few days whenever this is posted, or you can wait to see my final review on Goodreads. If you guys have read either Yesteryear or Into the Blue, you have to let me know your thoughts on them down below in the comments, and if you thought that they were worth the hype. And it would be super awesome if you guys could like and subscribe. It really does help out my channel, and if you made it until this far in the video, comment down below one of the blue hearts so I know who the real ones are who watched until the very end. And I think that's going to be it from me for today's video. I am so excited. It is such nice weather out right now, and I have so many fun summer videos that are going to be coming up real soon, so keep your eyes peeled for those. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. I love you guys so much. Hope you're all having an amazing day, and I will see you guys in my next video coming real soon. Bye, guys.
I don't even know what I'm doing half the time, if we're being honest. Why does this taste like nothing?
Also, her husband is just a complete idiot. Like, idiot, 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 idiot.
This carpenter bee is terrifying me. Everyone's a feminist until there was a spider around. 5 years, still you, still me, still here.
Peace.